Hey everybody on YouTube, it's Dan from Dan's Fish, and today I'm going to give you a tour of my fish room. Show you how I do things, why I do things, and yeah, so let's take a look. Okay, so here's the door to my fish room. It's off my laundry room in my basement, and the reason I'm showing you this is for this, the insulation, which is pretty important. You want the room to be well insulated. And the other thing that's important here is this. This is my oxygen. I get this from a welding supply shop in town, and this is what I fill the bags with when I ship them. So if we go through the door, then immediately, actually I'm going to leave that door open. Let some cool air in here. Then if you go through the door and take a right, immediately you come to the first thing I want to talk about, which is this. This is my water treatment and storage system. Basically the water comes in, this is your hot and your cold. They mix in here and go through here into these two carbon filters. And I use those to remove the chlorine and any kind of chemicals in the water. I don't use a particulate filter. I used to, but my water's so darn clean that I honestly never really needed it. It never got dirty. So instead I double up on the dechlorinator on the carbon blocks to make sure I don't get any chlorine in here. So the water comes through those and then down this little pipe here and into the water storage container, in which I have two pumps. This little guy here is just to recirculate the water, and this big boy there is to pump the water to the tanks. So that big guy's usually off, and that little guy's usually running, unless I'm filling up the tanks, and then I turn on the big guy. So the water goes in here. I keep this room at 86 degrees, and that way the water temperature stays about 84 degrees. Up here is a thermostat with a temperature probe. Here's the temperature probe that comes off the thermostat. Got that from Gemco. Gemco has great equipment, and I'm not paid to say that. They've been doing this for years, and John over there really knows what he's talking about. And then this plug here from the thermostat runs down into the water storage container and is attached to that heater, which is laying there next to that recirculating pump. And I put that heater on a little PVC frame so it's not touching the bottom of the container. It's not touching any plastic so that it won't melt a hole in my water storage container. So the water goes in there and I recirculate it. My water is fairly devoid of any minerals or anything, so I add a little bit of salt. I'll add about 2 cups of salt to this 300-gallon water storage container. Let it circulate before I put it in my tanks. And what that does is that takes the gas off. So any nitrogen or other gas that is dissolved in the water, it gives them a chance to release and evaporate before I put it in my tank so that my fish don't get the bends. If you've ever filled your tank up and everything was covered with these tiny little bubbles, that's because the dissolved gases are now being released, and that's kind of an irritant for the fish. So once it's been in here for a while, and it's ready to go, then I'll turn on the pump that's inside. It'll come up and over and out here, and from there I can use this hose to easily fill up my tanks. Really important is this. This is a overflow. There's a pipe inside the tank that goes up to about here, so that I can't overflow this tank and flood my house. I've done that before I put this system in. And so now I have that. So the overflow just goes down behind this dehumidifier and into this drain here, should I need it. So I pump the water from here out into this hose, and I'll take that around to the different tanks, and that's how I fill them. To drain them, excuse me, it is allergy season here in Wyoming. To drain them, some of them have these on, and I'll just open that up and that'll drain about 50% of the water. Or a lot of these tanks are drilled, and if you look back here you can see the pipe coming off the back. inside the tank behind this Hamburg-Matten filter, between the filter and the glass, you can see that little gray elbow in there, I hope. Yeah, there we go. That is what I use. None of these have bulkheads in them. I use those, and I screw them directly into this PVC, and I have a little rubber washer in there, and that works as my bulkhead. So instead of spending $6-7 per bulkhead, I just get these gray little pieces of pipe from Home Depot and screw them into traditional threaded PVC, and then that comes down, and as you can see, maybe it's got a valve on it. I just open that valve and the water will drain down into here. So that's how I do my water changes. I just open the valve. They all change about 50% of the water, sometimes up to 70-75%, depending on how this little gray pipe is situated in each of the tanks. Oops, my air stone is down a little too far, and it is letting some air out of the uplift stand for that filter. So let me fix that real quick. Okay, there we go. There we go. The other thing, so that's kind of the water changing system. So I just fill the tanks up, they drain automatically, and then I pump the water in from the water storage tank. So it's not completely automated, it's like semi-automated. Each tank, as you can see, has its own net. All these tanks do. And that is because I'm bringing in fish quite a bit, and I don't want to take a net from one tank that might have a diseased animal in it and then use it in all the other tanks, and I'm too lazy to want to sterilize all the nets all the time. So each net gets its own tank. So basically, water is drained from a tank, put in the tank, it has its own net, so they're not completely isolated systems, but they're fairly isolated. And it works really well for all the fish I've had in here. I've had everything from killifish to live bears to barbs to wild type betas to discus, and all the fish seem to do really well in this system. I can keep it clean really easily. So that's kind of the water changing system. Once it goes down to this drain, that circles all the way around, goes over here, and then goes out of the fish room and drains into a bathroom that's down here, and through a sump pump, and then drain into the black water discharge for the house. So that's how I do that. Let's see here. A couple other things that you need to know about this fish room. Let's start with lighting. I just use these LED shop lights. They're $80 for an 8-foot light, and they have I think 9,000 lumens per unit, and so they're pretty good. So most of my tanks are lit by those. For these down here, I actually built a lighting unit. There's the light is in there. I don't know if you can see it. And then this is right here is just a plastic PVC gutter. So I just took the lights, screwed them up into the gutter, and then hung the gutter here and used that white gutter as a reflector. I think you can get like 16 feet for like $5 or something like that at Home Depot with that gutter. So it makes a cheap, effective reflector, and it prevents the light from spilling out too far. I didn't worry about that with these lights up here because the spillage into the room actually helps light the room, which is kind of nice. All of these tanks here on this rack are 30-gallon breeders, and most of them came from an old fish wholesaler that I worked for in breeder, and they sold online too. And when they redid their facility, they got rid of all these old 30-gallon breeders. And I love these because it has a good footprint. It's 18 inches deep, only 11 inches high, and 3 feet long. And you can't find these anymore. Unless you have them custom made, no one makes them anymore. So you'll notice a lot of my tanks are pretty scratched up, like this one that the red dragons are in. I mean, you can't even, that glass is really foggy. But I haven't got rid of these tanks because I can't find them anymore, and I really like them for lots of things. So that's the lighting system. The other thing about the lighting is it's on this old automatic controller, so that it goes on and off automatically, so I don't have to worry about forgetting it. So I just put that there and it turns on and off, and I don't have to. Before I got that, I'd accidentally leave the light on all night sometimes, and that was no good. So that's light, that's water and lighting. Air, I have 2 pumps in here. These are both from Gemco, and again, I'm not paid to say that. They're mounted up here in my ceiling. They're both diaphragm pumps from Gemco. I have 2 of them, and they run the air out through this hose into this manifold here. And from there, I feed the tanks directly. And I have two of these, 2 pumps and 2 manifolds. They have a bleed valve on the end, and they work really well. So these 2 little pumps can power my entire fish room, which is pretty cool. Couple things that are really important in a fish room. Another thing is this is, you know, all insulation. This is all 2-inch insulated sheets. So it's basically like an ice box, like a cooler in here. And so it costs very little to heat the room, which is important. I live in Wyoming. It gets 30 below outside during the winter. Here's the heater. It's this wall-mounted heater. And for air circulation, I use these Vornado fans. They're awesome. I have 2. One blowing heat down from the heater, and one on the opposite side of the room on the floor blowing cold air up. And so the air circulation is important. Then I have one other little fan down there that I bought that doesn't do much, but I use it to pump to blow cold air from the floor up to the heater again. The other thing that heats the room is this. This is a dehumidifier. It blows air around pretty well, and I usually keep the humidity about 35-40% in here. And this drains automatically to my drain system here, so I don't have to worry about emptying it all the time. And yeah, it's a great little inexpensive, well, not inexpensive, they're about $250, but as dehumidifiers go, that's a pretty good deal. The last one I had lasted 4 years, and then it finally broke, and this is a new one, and I expect to get, 4 or 5 years of use out of it as well. Electricity, that's one area where this room is not done well. I only have a few outlets, and so I run everything to power strips and things like that. Fortunately, nothing I have takes much electricity, so it's not pulling tons of amperage or anything. And the things that do, like the dehumidifier and the 1,000-watt heater, which is heating the water storage container, those are on their own outlet, just to prevent fires and things like that. In the middle here, I have a rack of 20-gallon longs. There's 6 of them there. And right now I don't have anything in them, but I like that size tank too. And here's a standard 30-gallon, and then over here is a 55-gallon. There's a 20 long below it and a 5.5 gallon to the side. And then outside in the other part of the basement, I have a 120-gallon. Couple luxuries. This is the tripod that I can film with, which is nice. Helps immensely when I make these videos or take pictures. Everybody needs one of these. This is just a cart. And when I'm packing fish or feeding or unpacking an order or anything like that, this thing is invaluable. And the other thing you need is a chair. I don't have a rolling stool. That's my new... sounded like I said rolling stool. No, I'm not talking about bowel movements here. Sorry about that. I don't have a rolling stool, like a shop stool, and I want to get one of those eventually. But I have this, and it's lightweight and works for me. And then some speakers. So right now, because the door is open, we're at 82 degrees and 37% humidity, but usually it's around 86 degrees in here. The highest, it looks like last night, it topped out at 88. The water in these tanks is generally about 2 degrees lower than the heat in the room, just because evaporation cools it down somewhat. So anyway, that's pretty much the fish room. Well insulated, cheap lighting, a couple pumps to pump air to the whole thing, water storage and transfer system, drain system. These racks, I built these using Ted Judy's system, which if you want to know how to build them, he has a detailed series of videos on it on his website, Ted Judy. I think it's called tedsfishroom.com or something like that. So if you want to know how to build these, that's awesome. Then you don't waste a bunch of space with cinder blocks. It's more work, but it saves space. It looks kind of more uniform, and it's pretty darn strong. The other system I use are these cinder block systems because they're just so easy. Stack cinder blocks, throw 4x4s on there, and you're done. Yeah, so I do that especially for temporary setups. Outside in the other part of the basement, I have a freezer and a fridge where I keep food, frozen food, and stuff that needs to be refrigerated, as well as all my packing materials and things like that, my medicines. And then in another video, I'll show you how I pack fish and how I medicate fish and all those things. Anyway, that's the basic tour of the fish room. It's not humongous, but I can get a lot of fish in here. And the best part is I can easily change the water. So it takes no time at all to do a 50% water change in the morning and another one in the evening on all these guys, so I can keep their water crystal clear, keep them growing. And I feed them a lot because they're little. These discus are about 2 to 3 inches. They have a lot of growing to do, and so I tend to feed a ton so that they grow. I don't want to stump them. Anyway, that's the fish room that I have here at Dan's Fish. If you have any questions or anything, leave them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them. And yeah, thanks for watching. All right, bye.